Hi everyone. Uh, Today we will talk about improving reading speed. As we all know, and if you don't, you will find out soon enough that the CLAT is as much a test of your skills as a test of your reading speed and reading comprehension. Almost every question that you see is in the form of a body of text followed by a certain number of questions. So, for example, when we talk about the English language part of the CLAT, okay, now there's a passage followed by five questions, and you may have five passages followed by five questions each. Similarly, the logical reasoning section will have a similar number of passages, five to six passages, followed by four to five questions. Then, even for the QT part, the quantitative techniques part, you have some data followed by questions based on that data. So, you have to read that data. Then, the legal reasoning section again has a passage that explains a certain set of principles, and then you're given certain situations, and you have to see whether, according to the principles explained in the main passage, what outcome or judgment is fair in the situation described in the prompt. Okay, so legal reasoning section tends to have the most reading of all the sections. And then, of course, we have our general knowledge. Now, again, in general knowledge, it is a passage followed by some questions that are related to that passage. Now, the answer may or may not be within the passage, but the passage serves as a context for what the questions will be. So, reading becomes very important. Now, what happens is that as a reader, okay, you may have developed certain wrong skills, so to say, or you might not have worked on your reading comprehension skills. So, by the means of this video, I'll try to share with you some pointers, some strategies that have worked for students in the past that continue to work for. So, I do all of these things myself whenever I write any tests. So, let's look at what we have to do. So again, a reiteration of why reading speed is important. Crucial part of English language and logical reasoning. Then again, as I said, even in legal aptitude, there is a lot of reading, even in GK, even in quantitative techniques. Yeah. Now, when your reading speed is high, okay, so for example, a person who's able to read, let's say, read and comprehend 200 words per minute versus a person who can comprehend 50 words per minute. So the person whose reading speed is around 200 words per minute, okay, will be able to read English language passage in roughly 2 minutes. An easy passage. The person with a 50 words per minute reading speed will take approximately 8 minutes to read that passage. And then let's not forget that the passage will be followed by questions. So the questions themselves will be a sentence long, and then the options will be there. The options will also be one sentence long. So roughly each question and its four options will add another 50 words to your reading. So if the passage itself is of around, let's say, 400 words, and you have five questions that follow, so that's 250 words of reading in terms of the question and the options. That means you're reading actually 650 words. Okay. So person with a 2 minute readings, 200 words per minute reading speed, okay, even assuming that he has to devote some extra time to analyze the options and eliminate options. Okay, let's say 2 minutes for reading the passage and another 2 minutes for solving it. Okay, so that's 4 minutes. Okay, maybe 5 minutes. Okay, now compare it to someone whose reading speed is 50 words per minute. So for the passage itself, that person has taken 8 minutes. And then he has another 250 words to read in terms of questions and options. Okay. So that's another 5 minutes. Now for him, the process of elimination will be slower. Right? So assuming he takes another 2 to 3 minutes there, okay, so he has 7 minutes of spent on questions and another 8 minutes spent on the passage itself. So this person is looking at a 15-minute per passage. If you look at 15-minute per passage, you are looking at how many? 15 8's 120, right? 120 minutes. So you're looking at 8 passages solved in the entire test. Okay. And on the other hand, as we discussed, a person with around 200 word per minute reading speed is spending around 5 minutes on a passage. Okay. So this person is able to do justice to almost all of the passages in the test. So his reading speed will allow him to, read all passages, evaluate all questions and options, and then answer a lot more questions. Then the reading speed can also help you analyze ideas faster. I will get into analyzing ideas faster and better in a subsequent slide. Time management, obviously, and gives you an edge over other test takers. Again, yes, because if you are done with everything, okay, and others are still struggling, okay, that itself shows that you were a lot better prepared. I remember this one instance that we have a faculty. He's like he's like a genius, but raised to a different level of genius. Okay. Amazing, amazing intelligence, amazingly intellectual person. I have not met many people like him. Let me say, I have not met any people like him. So I remember this one management entrance test. So two faculty had gone to write this test. This faculty, the genius faculty, and another faculty, a very, very good faculty. And he said that the section, the other faculty told me that the section was for 60 minutes. And I saw this gentleman finish everything in 18 minutes. And then he was just sitting there looking around, bored, yawning, laid his head on his arms and went to sleep. And he said that psyched me out more than anything else because, it showed me just how much of a difference is there between a person who's a genius like this person who finished in 18 minutes versus someone like me who was very good but is nowhere near as good as this genius person. So you can with your good reading speed you can have perhaps other feel that complex, okay, about you, that how am I supposed to compete with a person like this who is finishing off passages in 5 minutes flat. So definitely an edge over other test takers. Strategies for speed reading. Number one, eye span. So if you read the newspaper, you will see that the newspapers are printed in narrow columns. Okay. So this column, this column, this column. Okay. Why this? They could easily do this, right? But they want you to be able to process it fast. And they do so by narrowing the span in which you have to read. If the span is very wide, you go like this. If the span is very narrow, you read from top to bottom rather than side to side and then going from top to bottom. So work on your eye span, sorry. How do I work on my eye span? Okay. Generally, if you just look up and look to the sides, you will see that you have quite a lot of peripheral vision, right? But we are not talking about peripheral vision. We are talking about what I can read there in front of my screen. Okay? So moving the screen slightly farther away from you will give you that advantage where your eye span will be more. So work on your eye span, find out the optimum distance of the screen where you're able to read the screen well, but at the same time, you don't have to move your head from side to side in order to get what is in the uh, in the in that column of text. The next one is clustering. So for a lot of readers, people who read a lot of books, okay, if you're one of them, probably you will, nod your head in agreement with me that for a lot of people who read a lot of books, if you ask them specific details about what they read on a particular page, they will not remember. But they will remember the overview of what was said on this page. They might not remember names of characters, but they will be able to follow the plot. So, this is a macro skill, but a smaller version of this skill is the clustering skill. When you don't, you know, you don't obsess over each word. Okay. You read like, okay, my friend is tall. Okay. So, friend, tall. Those are the only two important words. He's a good basketball player. So, again, good basketball player. I am trying to narrow what I want to retain. Everything else is detail. If I need, I will come back to it. But otherwise, I don't want to spend too much time trying to, put each word on a mental map. No, I just want a big picture on the mental map. So read 3 2 words at a time. Okay. And then you can reread at normal speed and see what you have missed. A lot of times you will find that these are not very important details. Okay. And if if you're not in the habit of reading, 15 minutes of reading time per day is very little. You have to devote a lot more time. But if you're in the habit of reading, but you're not in the habit of, reading for the big picture, okay, then you should devote at least 15 minutes every day for this purpose. Stop vocalizing, sub-vocalizing, and using pointing devices. What do we mean by this? Vocalizing is when you're reading, okay, are your lips moving? So do you read loudly? Do you use a pen and pencil? So if my lips are moving, okay, if my vocal cords are producing sound, I am vocalizing. Now, reading and sub-vocalizing is, okay, you're not producing a sound, okay, but in your mind, you're reading one word, okay. What happens then is that your reading speed will perhaps be 40%, maybe even 25% of what it can be. So you will have reduced your reading speed by at least one half, if not more. So stop vocalizing, stop sub-vocalizing, read here, not here, not here, read here. Do not follow a piece of text with your finger or the mouse or the pen or the pencil, because again, what you will do in that case is that you will read each word. We don't want to read each word. After reading that 450 words passage, I want to know what was the big takeaway from this. What was this about? What was the big takeaway? If I know these two things, okay, I have understood the passage. And then I can go to the questions. Next one is avoid backtracking or regression. Okay. So this happens in two ways. One is I'm reading a passage, I don't understand something, so I reread it. A certain piece of text, I reread perhaps a paragraph, okay. Or when I'm on the questions themselves, then I go back to the passage and I again scan through the entire passage to find out the answers to the question. So, as far as possible, avoid backtracking. Understand something. Reading comprehension at times can be like driving through the city. Okay. Now, at some point, the road is empty. So you're able to go to perhaps the third gear also. Okay. And you're driving at around 40, 50, 60 kilometers per hour. And then the traffic increases, so you slow down, and now you're traveling in the second gear at perhaps 30 kilometers per hour. And then there is a traffic light, or there is like a traffic jam, and now you're down to gear one, and you're at a halt, or moving at, let's say, very, very slow speed. So reading comprehension can be like that. Certain parts of the passage might be very easy to understand, so you breeze through them. Okay. And then comes a part which is, or a sentence which is hard to understand. Now that is where you moved into the first gear. Now you're trying to process that sentence, or process that small part of the text, to understand what does it want to say, how does it relate to the rest of what I have read. So avoid regression, avoid backtracking. Okay. And the other, when you're reading in such a manner that you're, slowing down, okay, and understanding, then you're at the same time trying to create a mental map in your mind. If your mental map is complete, your need to regress will arise only when you get questions based on particular sentence in the passage. If the questions are related to the main idea, you will not need to regress. If the question is related to the title of the passage, or the purpose of the author in writing the passage, or the tone of the author, you will not need to go back to the passage, because you have already formed a mental map. It is only when which of the following was gifted by the author to his child. Okay, now you might need to go back to the passage, because you all you've read is that the author is an amazing father, very participative in his child's life. Okay. But you did not pay attention to the gift, because the gift was a part of his being, present and attentive in his child's life. So now you go back to the passage to find out, okay, what did he give? That regression is fine. Okay, because that asks you to verify a very particular detail from the passage. But for macro questions, questions that are based on big ideas, you should not need to regress to the passage. Build your vocabulary. I recently watched a reel by Javed Akhtar, Instagram. I shared it with other verbal faculty also. In that, he says, and obviously I paraphrase, I'm not a poet, but what he says is that words are bricks. The bricks build you use bricks to build a house. Similarly, you use words to build a story, to build a narrative. If you have fewer words, fewer bricks at your disposal, you will not be able to build a big house. Similarly, if you have fewer words at your disposal, you will not be able to build a big story. And then he says, nowadays, young people, I hear young people say, you know what I mean. And he says, I tell them, no, I don't know what you mean. And then Javed Akhtar continues and he says that, the reason people say, you know what I mean, is because they don't have the repertoire of words to express that feeling. So build your vocabulary. And one of the best ways of building a vocabulary is by reading, identifying new words, looking them up in the dictionary, see whether the word has a negative or a positive connotation, maintaining a separate Google Sheet that has all the new words that you have. So, what I have is the new word. So, first of all, is a serial number. Because sometimes if I sort my Google Sheet, if I don't have serial numbers, I will never be able to unsort it. The second column contains the word. The third column contains the pronunciation. Yeah. If I don't know the pronunciation, then the learning of the word is incomplete. Okay. Then I write down in the next column, I write down the meaning of the word. If the word has more than one meaning, as a lot of words do, then I limit myself to the two most important ones. And then I write down a sentence that uses the word in that meaning. So if it has two meanings, I will write two sentences. And then in the next column, I will end up writing, perhaps one or two synonyms, one or two antonyms. So that is my Google Sheet for new words. So that almost always is open on my computer. I come across a new word, I think about it, I read it, I try to understand it from the context. Then I look it up on Merriam-Webster or Oxford dictionaries, and then I add it to my Google Sheet. So build your vocabulary. Skimming or previewing. This is kind of like what I said to you earlier, that you determine your driving speed based on the traffic conditions. Okay. Don't spend a lot of time on things that are not very important. Get an overview of what is happening in the passage. Form a mental image or a mental animation in your mind of what is going on in the passage. Skim, read only the important parts and move on. Train to read fast. So that will happen only when you read a lot. Now, my suggestion is that the reading speed should become a byproduct of your reading habit. Don't read to read fast. It reminds me of that gag, that a person says, goes for an interview and he says, the interviewer asks him, so, what are your skills? He says, well, I'm the fastest human calculator. The interviewer asks him, okay, gives him a certain number. What is 33 multiplied by 77 multiplied by 5 plus cube root of something? And the person gives a random number. The interviewer says, well, this is not correct. And the interviewee says, well, I never said anything about being correct. All I said was I am the fastest human calculator. So I can calculate fast. I I don't promise to give you the right answer. So similarly, reading for speed alone will not yield rich dividends, because you can read, but if you don't comprehend, you will not be able to answer the questions. So always focus on your comprehension. Now, one way of deliberately increasing your reading speed is, when you're reading, okay, try to read just a little bit faster than your normal speed. So you will feel a tiny bit of anxiety that, okay, I might not understand everything that is written here. Okay. But it's like, you're running fast. Okay. You feel that if you try to go any faster, you will fall down. It's the same with the reading. Okay. You try to go a little faster than your normal speed. Okay. Week, 10 days later, that will become the default reading speed. Now you again move on slightly faster than your normal reading speed. In a period of, let's say, 5 to 6 months, you will have built up, quite, you will have increased your reading speed quite significantly. And then when approaching passages, make short notes where necessary. So summarize an entire paragraph in 10 to 12 words. Now, the words don't have to be a sentence. They don't have to be a grammatically correct sentence. But if I were to give you those 10, 12 words, will you be able to, summarize? Will you be able to identify the major ideas contained in that passage, in that paragraph? If the answer is yes, you have summarized it well. So now if you're reading a passage which has, let's say, a passage that has 4 paragraphs. So you have a 10, 12 word summary of each paragraph. That means you end up with a summary, total summary sentences, 4 total summary sentences for each paragraph. You have one. And then you end up with total of around 40 to 50 words. In those 40 to 50 words, you should have an overview of the passage. You should have a summary of the passage as well. If you're able to develop that skill, it will help you in multiple ways. For any indirect questions, such as reading for the main idea, title, tone, source, profession of the author, primary purpose of the author in writing the passage, okay, you will be able to find that from the summary. And even when attempting those specific detailed questions, okay, your paragraph summaries will tell you, okay, they might not tell you where the idea is, but they will definitely tell you which paragraphs the idea is not present in. So if it's not in paragraph 1, it's not in paragraph 3, it's not in paragraph 4, then it has to be in paragraph number 2. So this will help you understand the flow of the passage and locate details faster. To summarize, speed reading is a specific skill or technique of silent reading. No vocalizing, no sub-vocalizing, that helps you read faster and comprehend better. Okay. First, read some simple text to ascertain what is your default reading speed. And then as you read more, as you practice more, okay, keep building upon your reading speed. Ascertain your eye span and try to optimize it by placing the text near or farther away from your eyes. Learn to chunk words, grasp the idea contained within 4 or 5 words or a sentence rather than read all the words in that sentence. No vocalizing. Learn to read newspapers vertically. Try to stop regression and consciously read fast. As I said, read at the speed that makes you slightly uncomfortable, that I'm going to lose the thread of the text, and improve your concentration. Experience improved speed and improved comprehension. This will be the byproduct of doing all the things that have been listed on the passage. So with this, we come to an end of the speed reading session. Hope you found it useful. We will be back with more such content for you later. Bye.